is the Royal Western India Turf Club, where the who's who of the racing fraternity had descended in the last week of January for the 36th Asian Racing Conference, the global forum for the horse racing industry. Hello and welcome to the Champions of the Turf. I am Mandira Lalwani here at the Mahalakshmi Racecourse, where the Asian Racing Conference was kicked off with the Asian Racing Federation Race Day, where the feature race was the Group 1 Vilupunawala Indian Oaks.
The 36th Asian Racing Conference is the most important racing conference in Asia, if not the world, and is held every 2 years. The honour for 2016 went to India, and with over 600 high-powered delegates flying in from all over the world, it promised to be a week that would bring new and innovative ideas to the industry. The week began with the Asian Racing Federation Race Day, which hosted the Grade 1 Vilupunawala Indian Oaks amongst a host of other races that found sponsorships from all parts of the world. The race meet was graced by Princess Zara Aga Khan. The race over 2,400 meters had a lineup of 17 fillies come into the parade ring, and the field included the 1,000 guineas winner Myrtlewood from India's champion trainer Pacey Shroff's yard. From a family that was best known for its milers, there was some who doubted her stamina. Wearing the blue silks, she proved to be much too strong for the others, demonstrating a turn of foot that was electric. She left the others standing still and took home the prize from the chairman of the Asian Racing Conference Working Group, Cyrus Poonawalla and Princess Zara.
Cameroon on the outside, but Myrtlewood is well clear of Chef Dior. Myrtlewood winning the Vilupunawala Indian Oaks from Chef Dior. Fight for third between Shivalik Heroine and wave after wave, and heaven is here.
Well, I've only seen half the race because I got back into the stands late, so I only saw it from the 7 furlong marker, and I was watching Myrtlewood for a while. Then I lost sight of her and I suddenly saw her around the bend about 10 or 15 horses wide, and then she did well from there. Let's see how she gets back, and well, logically it would have to be the Indian Derby. I want to say something specially about the lady that the race was named after, Mrs. Vilupunawala. I think she was one of the finest human beings that you could ever come across, and I think this race is aptly named after her. I'm really happy that I could win it.
The race was run in the fashion that Myrtlewood was actually second last most of the way, the first part. And when I thought that maybe she's not going to be able to keep up with the pace, she suddenly accelerated round the bend. She went 6 wide and then she came flying home. So I think as far as the race is concerned, it's a fairy book race. We had doubts on her stamina, but the way she won, she looked like she won by 4 lengths. She could have won by another 2. Well, we hope to run her in the Indian Derby next.
Myrtlewood is a well-bred daughter of one of India's leading sires, multidimensional, and will target the colts in the Indian Derby next in a couple of weeks. A few races earlier, India's highest stakes earner was sent out in the Breeders' of India Turf Championships over 2,000 meters against 5 other rivals. With about $1 million to his credit so far, Quasar has become one of the best middle distance runners in India in the past decade or so. Carrying a heavy impost of 60 kilos on his back, he stretched away powerfully from his rivals despite being a touch underdone according to his connections.
Quasar by about half a length to 1 length now, the good of Booker Jones and Shivalik Shahs, but going for the line now with 100 to run. Booker Jones fighting back. Quasar really having to work for this victory, but he's pulled away now by about 1.5 lengths there from Booker Jones. Going for the line, and Quasar keeps his winning streak to win from Booker Jones. Then there was Shivalik Shahs followed there way behind.
A very fast run race. I'd like my partners to come, Mr. Tanmay and Mr. Patankar. So very fast run race, right from the beginning. I think it suited him broadly to win the race, but it got a little too fast in the end. I think 600, 800 from home, he was cruising still. So.
I think he ran a very good race. It was a fast-paced race, as he mentioned, and let's see what we'll do of him afterwards.
He's an excellent horse. That much only I can tell you.
Kausar is a horse, I don't need to speak anything, he speaks himself. He won in a record timing mile and quarter today. And he had put on 12 kilos more than normal weight he runs. But still carrying 60 kilos he has won, and I'm still happy. And I'm sure there's more scope of him doing well better in the future. The next race I think we will be targeting for the in Chennai in the Invitation Cup. Just keeping our fingers crossed and hoping everything goes well for him.
Quasar will next take on the Classic Crop when he targets the Invitation Cup in March. The race day was a plethora of the best that racing has to offer and a promise of what was to come the rest of the week.
What a race and what an emphatic win by the Wonder filly Myrtlewood. We're going to slip into a quick break here. When we return, is the stars that descend on the racing fraternity. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us here on Champions of the Turf. In the opening ceremony for the Asian Racing Conference, Mumbai brought Bollywood to a glittering evening where the keynote address was delivered by none other than Princess Zara Aga Khan to an audience which was rapt.
20 years ago, the Asian Racing Conference was held in Mumbai, and delegates from all over the world and the who's who of racing made their way to the city of Mumbai to attend the three-day event. The opening ceremony was held on Monday night, and one of Bollywood's leading ladies, Jacqueline Fernandez, brought the roof down after the ceremonial opening. The tone for the occasion was set by the opening address delivered by the guest of honor, Princess Zara Aga Khan, who had everyone in rapt attention, hanging on every word that she said.
Racing and breeding have always been seen as high-end activities, a frivolity associated with silly hats. But I would like to underline the fact that 90% of the time and effort involved in creating a racehorse are anchored in the rural economy, and that most of us spend far more time in our welly boots than in our top hats. The horse industry is an important part of the rural economy, employing millions of people around the world in areas of shrinking agricultural production. It supports farms and villages. It provides permanent year-round employment to riders, lads, farriers, vets, farmers, and businesses of all kind. As my father said, you can look at the horse in human life, in agriculture and war, as a vehicle of exploration for hundreds of years back. When you think about it, the horse is one of the most extraordinary phenomena we have. This industry preserves a species and also an entire population that nurtures that species.
The 3 days of the Asian Racing Conference saw all the horse racing decision makers discuss policy and the way forward in a sport that is constantly innovating. The highlights included doping, illegal betting, and a promising new future that China offers.
The conference over 3 days on the 26th, 27th and 28th of January had business sessions that covered the gamut of topics ranging from wagering to handicap, from industry profiles to drug-free racing. The first day kicked off with a session on the wagering landscape in the horse racing industry, had the chairman of the Asian Racing Conference speak about industry trends and strategies.
First of all, good morning and a big welcome to all of you on behalf of the Asian Racing Federation. We have a very full agenda, and what we mentioned before, it goes from topics of movement of horses, quality control of races, and they are all very important. But we feel there is clearly one very, very important topic we want to address today, which is key to our industry, and that has to do with wagering income. If you look at a global worldwide trend, that wagering is the lifeblood of racing. If you look at income streams which wagering generate, it's different like football, where football in a way has no direct wagering income. Their main driver is broadcasting rights, which have exploded. But if you look at the wagering, at the racing industry, in the end, 70–75% of the income is generated directly or indirectly by wagering. And one has to really look at, do we galloping ahead, or do we have a development where we are not growing, where we fall into a trot? So when you look at that you don't see growth, then to sustain your business, to sustain in a way especially the significant necessary investment for a customer experience, you have to find different income sources.
The RWITC has managed to put Mumbai on the racing map, and the chairman of the marketing committee highlighted that marketing horse racing had to be innovative and find multiple platforms from which to position its assets. In possibly a feat that is unmatched globally, the RWITC may be the only race club in the world that has almost every race day sponsored by a corporate house.
Sponsorships is the heart of our marketing program. Growth in sponsorships at the RWITC has been exponential, from virtually nothing a decade ago to a situation where we have a sponsored race every weekend through almost 8 months of the year. Our annual sponsorship at the ongoing Mumbai season this year would be over $15 million. We attract contributors from across the industry spectrum, covering real estate, liquor, chambers of commerce, lifestyle, breeders, and more. It is not about just selling 1 or 2 or 3 races in a year, but one every week, which makes our task all that more challenging. We have set a high benchmark and perhaps is the single most factor that has set our club in a league of its own.
Drug-free racing and doping has always been a subject that is at the forefront of policy making, and the Asian Racing Conference was fortunate to bring on board the chairman of the IFHA, Louis Romanet, who spoke about the International Federation's anti-doping remit.
Now we're facing the 21st century where we have to go further. We are going from medication control to doping control. So we have addressed the problem of therapeutic substance. We now have to address the problem of some specific doping agents which are difficult to find. We have the new challenge of gene doping and the possibility of the modification of the heritable genome which must be strictly forbidden. So clearly we will permanently have to advance in order to follow all the scientific evolutions which we have. As was mentioned by the previous speaker, clearly the global integrity of racing is fundamental. It's a basic principle. That must be our permanent priority for the confidence of the betting people, of the punter, but also for the breeding industry. We are there to select the best breed in order that they will go back to stud and reproduce, and these horses must run clean of medication. That's very important. And we must, in our policy, we must cover the whole life of the thoroughbred, from its conception to its final retirement, and we must ensure full traceability and have permanent access to every horse and total transparency. We cannot accept that a horse suddenly disappears for 6 months, you don't know where he are, and he suddenly come back and he wins a Group 1 race. I think that's not what acceptable. That's why we must develop control in training.
China could become the next forefront for horse racing. And while there are multiple players venturing into what may be the world's biggest racing market in the future, the Hong Kong Jockey Club has begun to execute its program for development there.
It's the Hong Kong Jockey Club's approach to the development of this software, which I'll concentrate upon today. But before doing so, let me give you some context by explaining the rationale for our involvement. First, as you will have appreciated by now, I think, but it bears elaborating on the point that the club has a long history of contribution and engagement in mainland China. This includes, but it's not limited to contributions connected with the horse industry. Secondly, as you're aware, the development of racing in the region is a core mission of the Asian Racing Federation, and as the host of the ARF Secretariat, the club takes this mission very seriously. Finally, there is in a sense a natural extension occurring here. Take for example the training of jockeys, work riders and stable staff. The vocational training capabilities we've built up in Hong Kong are already being deployed in mainland China. Since 2012, we've been delivering this training for our existing labour force needs across the border in Guaming. From this year, we'll commence training of locally recruited youth to become part of the skilled workforce at the Shungfa Training Centre. You will appreciate, therefore, that we are, in a very real sense, a natural partner to work with the governing bodies in China on the development of this nascent sport. As Winfred indicated in introducing this session, the club's entered into 2 such partnerships, one with the China Horse Industry Association and one with the Chinese Equestrian Association. Now, these partnerships have a broad compass.
The week was resplendent with entertainment and hospitality that certainly set a benchmark for South Korea to follow as the next host in 2 years. And the racing poet, Henry Birtles, could not have demonstrated the passion that many have had for this sport any better, bringing the curtain down on a fabulous event.
Why do they come on that June afternoon to the top of a hill at the capital's edge? Why sit in traffic for half of the day? Why are they here? Well, they've gathered to pledge an allegiance to one, and for centuries they've come to witness the run of the boy who'll be king, whose name could be sung for as long as men sing, who's proved that he holds all the aces you need, assuming the mantle that greatness bestows by placing himself at the head of his breed to put to the sword the most worthy of foes. Why do the names of the victors stand tall when a name is a name can mean nothing at all? Ask when you walk down your street or afar, have you heard of Nijinsky, Milreef, or Shergar? Do you know what I mean when I speak in hushed tones? Do you know what I mean when you can't describe joy? Do you get what they get when one rises alone? Why the blood still runs fast at the mention of Troy. This is the Derby, and this is the race that the rest of the world, through its name, find a place for their own measurement, for their own litmus test, to find a horse worthy of calling the best. And it all started there, upon high Epsom Downs, where the greatest still fight for the greatest of crowns, where men stand as one, whether blue blood or red, whether born of the street or in purple are bred, and they stand here to cheer, and they stand here to call, and they stand to acclaim one who rose above all. This is the Derby, and this is the race. This, the Kingmaker. Hold tight. Take your place. Thank you very much.
We're going to slip into a quick break here on the Champions of the Turf. When we return, we take you to the Poonawalla Stud Farm, not too far from Mumbai. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Champions of the Turf. The finale of the Asian Racing Conference could not have been more spectacular. The Poonawalla Stud Farm has been home to many a champion, and a visit to the stud farm transported the guests into a world of magic, resplendence and victory for a conference that has been easily amongst the best ever.
With all the business sessions and the hard work out of the way, it was time to treat the delegates to a day in the sun. The Poonawallas opened their hearts and the gates to their majestic stud farm to welcome everyone for the afternoon. The delegates and guests also got a glimpse at some of the farm's best horses, and everyone was in awe. As the conference wound to a close, it was time to get a last word on the takeaways from this mega event.
Well, first of all, it's my first time to India, and I think it's made such a great impression on many of us, myself included, about what a great destination India is. The conference itself, I thought was extraordinary. The business sessions were very informative, very well attended. I think it was one of the greatest conferences in the 36 conferences that the Asian Racing Federation has held. It was terrific, and it's going to be a great building block for Korea, because I think the momentum will continue as we go to Korea, and it'll get even greater. And so I think it's just a great thing that everybody can come together and kind of come together for a week and really walk away with a better industry.
It was a great conference. I think it's always very difficult to fill 3 days of conference. In Paris every year we have just 1 day, and all the big issues were raised, were discussed with very good panelists. A lot of new information, for example on illegal betting as a real challenge. And it was also a way for us who are taking part in all this conference to give information to people and to teach them about the challenge of the future. It was very well organized. All the main goals were dealt with. The organization was perfect. The country is unique. So I come back home full of ideas for my next conference.
I personally think some people came to me and saying that was probably even the best conference we had in relation to content. I think all the 3 days had very interesting topics, very interesting speakers. I personally think we came to very innovative ideas we came to the conclusion that we have to work closer together, especially to fight illegal gambling, and the whole colorfulness, the whole entertainment around the conference was marvelous, and therefore India has been an absolute marvelous host, and especially Cyrus Poonawalla as the chairman of the organizing committee.
One word, amazing. This has been an absolutely amazing Asian Racing Conference. Indeed, all of the racing conferences that are now held around the world, this would have to be the best I've been to. Look, we have talked about a lot of stuff. We had 12 business sessions over 3 days, and then before that we had the bureau meetings, including the Stewards Conference. A lot of very important ground covered. For me, the illegal gambling problem, that stands out as something that really was explored in the required detail, and encouragingly and importantly, we now have a way forward. That's essential. A lot of the marketing ideas were wonderful, and I know that delegates, they've said to me already, they'll take those back and start to apply them, so that's great.
With all the praise coming their way, the men behind the event were tired but ecstatic with having put India right up there on the global racing map.
I thought it went off very well. For our country, it was fabulous. Things went uneventfully, much better than my expectations.
I'm very, very pleased because after all the effort, I would term it as an outstanding success. And I asked some of the executive council members like Winfred and Andrew to give me honest feedback on how we did. And he said, you're right there at the top. So, and all the delegates, I'm happy. And that's the greatest satisfaction to hear that our visitors were happy. I think all the business sessions, there was a lot of take home on technology and wagering especially, on medication and the way they promote racing. So there was a lot of learning across the board. And I think the evenings gave us a chance to network, and I've met some very interesting people offline. So I think it's going to be the way up and up for Indian racing from here.
Well, I was nervous,
It's all work, clockwork, and I'm overwhelmed with the amount of praises that we have probably don't deserve. But there's no doubt that those who have spoken, not to me, but behind my back, and that's the important thing, have all been, never expected this put up show by India. The highlight was, of course, the zero level tolerance. There was huge participation on it. Message has gone down that the trainer is the responsible person unless he can prove that he was a victim of mitigating circumstances. And the stewards conference was brilliant. A lot of exchange of knowledge was taken place. These, in my opinion, were the two most important business sessions and the highlight of the conference.
That's it from all of us here at the Champions of the Turf. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed bringing all the details and excitement to you. See you soon. Until then, may the horse be with you. Goodbye.